Good morning, everyone. Welcome to St. Paul's Universalist Church on this last Sunday of September. Fun week weather-wise. We, complain about the summer heat. Fall did not disappoint as it arrived. I know we were working out on our back pasture, and it felt more like November than September, but now you get to play that fun game of, can I hold out turning on the heat before October 1st? Good luck with that. We failed a couple days ago. Anyway, in the form of announcements, I only have one up here. Today is our food pantry collection. So when we do that at the same time as our offertory. The wicker type baskets are for food pantry, and the metal ones are for the regular offering. Are there any other announcements that anyone in the congregation would like to share? Yes, Justin.
So this is an informal one. Herkimer College, 3 years
let us proceed to our choir call to worship.
Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai Lecha, Venashuva, Venashuva, Kadesh, Kadesh, Yamaynu Kekedom.
I open with the words of Zayed Abdelnour, who reminds us that there's no need to be perfect to inspire others. Let people get inspired by how you deal with your imperfections. And as is our tradition, we open with the lighting of the chalice. And as I do so, I invite you to join me in the words. May this flame, symbol of transformation since time began, fire our curiosity, strengthen our wills, and sustain our courage. And our opening song is number 215. Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with one another and with our God. You've probably noticed that there is a Jewish Hebrew influence in today's service, and there's good reason for that. It is Rosh Hashanah, which will lead to Yom Kippur, which is the Jewish Day of Atonement. That's part of the theme of today's sermon. In that spirit, I invite you to a time of prayerful meditation with these words of Vivian Pomeroy. Forgive us that often we forgive ourselves so easily and others so hardly. Forgive us that we expect perfection from those to whom we show none. Forgive us for repelling people by the way we set a good example. Forgive us for the folly of trying to improve a friend. Forbid that we should use our little idea of goodness as a spear to wound those who are different. Forbid that we should feel superior to others when we are only more shielded. And may we encourage the secret struggle of every person. Amen. Let us now enter into a moment of silence where we listen to the wisdom of our hearts and minds. This is what happens when you do your slideshow after you've spent 9 hours in the backfield. All right, slides are a little out of order, but I ask you to now join me in response to reading number 634. This is a reading traditional for this time of year. On turning. Now is the time for turning.
The leaves are beginning to turn, green to red and orange.
The birds are beginning to turn and are heading once more toward the south.
The animals are beginning to return, storing their food.
For leaves, birds, and animals, turning comes instinctively.
But for us, turning is not so easy.
It takes an act of will for us to make a turn. It means breaking with old habits.
It means admitting that we have been wrong, and this is never easy.
It means losing face. It means starting all over again. And this is always painful.
It means saying, I am sorry.
It means recognizing that we have the ability to change. These things are hard to do.
But unless we turn, we regret our efforts in these ways.
God help us to turn from callousness to sensitivity, from hostility to love, from pettiness to purpose, from envy to contentment, from carelessness to discipline, from fear to faith.
Turn us around, O God, and bring us back toward you.
Revive our lives as at the beginning.
Turn us toward each other, God, for in isolation there is no life.
And our next song is number 219. like to start by wishing you all a Happy New Year. On the Hebrew calendar, we just entered into the year 5783, and the observance known as Rosh Hashanah. It lasts for 10 days, culminating in the observance of Yom Kippur, which is also known as the Day of Atonement. Yom Kippur is considered the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. It is the day where people seek to be in harmony with God by starting with a clean slate. Traditionally, it is a time for reflection, soul-searching, and especially making peace with others over any wrongs that we have committed in the past year. Basically, it is a time to take ownership of your sins and make amends for them. Now, as Unitarian Universalists, we are generally not big on the notion of sin, confession, or absolution. At the same time, I think we can all acknowledge that there are moments when we all fall short, when we miss the mark, when we outright fail. This is something that all human beings have in common. And yet, on some level, I think that there's a part of us that would like to believe that we are at least less flawed than our neighbors. We know we're not, of course, but who likes to own up to their mistakes or to make amends? That's very uncomfortable. And it leaves us feeling vulnerable and sometimes scared. It opens us up to possible criticism or judgment from others. Many times, we choose not to act at all as a way of putting off dealing with our flaws and wrongdoings. But we can't escape from ourselves because we live in here. So how do we deal with this situation? How do we embrace our imperfections? And why would we want to do it in the first place? To help answer that question while honoring the spirit of the High Holy Days, I'm going to look to the Jewish scriptures. You may be thinking, I'm not familiar with the writings of the Jewish faith. But those books which people who observe the Jewish faith refer to as the Torah or the Tanakh are the same ones that make up the Old Testament and the Christian Bible. They're not in the same order necessarily, but they are in the same book. So if you are familiar with those stories, and I'm guessing many of you are, if you spent any time in Sunday school as youths, you know more about the Jewish scriptures than you think. The Old Testament is filled with the deeds of men and women who are considered heroes among the Jewish people. At the same time, they were all flawed people. Noah and his family were considered the only people worth saving when God decided to destroy the world by flood. He built an ark and followed God's command to preserve 2 of each type of animal. Noah also seemed to have a bit of a drinking problem, if you read between the lines. Abraham is the father of the Jewish nation. Despite their advanced ages, God told him and his wife Sarah that they would have descendants, quote, whose numbers would be greater than the stars. Yet despite the fact that God personally told them that he would give them children of their own, Abraham and Sarah were so trusting in their faith that they concocted the idea of Abraham fathering a child with one of Sarah's slaves. Abraham's grandson, Jacob, outright stole, cheated, to get the birthright of his older brother by tricking his blind father Isaac into thinking that he was in fact his older brother. he attached some hide to his arms, because apparently, Esau, his brother, had very furry forearms, very hairy forearms, so that's how he tricked his father into giving him his birthright. Moses led the Jewish people out of captivity in Egypt. He brought them the Ten Commandments. He led them to the Promised Land. However, Moses also had something of a temper, to the point that he once killed a man. Scriptures also suggest that Moses had some sort of speech impediment, most likely what we would call a stutter today. And after over 40 years of faithful servitude to God, he was denied entrance to the Promised Land himself because he performed a miracle in a way other than how God had told him to, and then implied that he, not God, was the one who had performed that miracle. And who can forget the mighty champion Samson with superhuman strength, only to lose it because he had an eye for the ladies and was seduced by a Philistine woman who cut off all of his hair, which was said to be the source of his strength. David was a warrior and a poet. The book of Psalms is attributed to him. He became king of the Jewish people and established the city of Jerusalem as their home. At the same time, David had an affair with a married woman, had a child out of wedlock, and David's solution to this was to take, have the woman's husband, he said, make sure that when we go to war, that guy's at the front of the line. And sure enough, he got killed. Incidentally, it also says in the scriptures that David was a man after God's own heart. So, it seems like God doesn't expect perfection. Esther ended up saving her people from the Persians by becoming queen. However, in order to do so, she had to lie about the fact that she was Jewish, violate many Jewish laws, and basically work her way into the halls of power, putting it delicately, kind of working her way to the top, if you take my meaning. Jonah was told by God to go and be his prophet to the people of Nineveh. Jonah didn't like the Ninevites, could care less, didn't want to destroy them, God, that's fine. Deliberately headed in the opposite direction of Nineveh. Tried to make a run for it by sailing out to sea and spent 3 days in the belly of a whale before he had a change of heart. Now, all of these people, these heroes, have something in common. They were flawed. They made mistakes. They were imperfect. And yet, God does not forsake them. God works with them to accomplish great things in spite of their imperfections. God knows that they are not perfect and that they never will be. One of the beautiful ideas behind Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is the notion that we need to take and make time to reflect, review, and rethink who we are and what we have achieved in our lives. And if we do that, we would likely find that we are not 100% satisfied with who we are. Yes, we are imperfect, and we will never be perfect, but that should never keep us from moving in that direction. In order to grow as people, whether you're in your 20s or your 90s, there should always be a gap between who we are and who we could be, between reality and our hopes and aspirations. And if our aspirations for ourselves are ever completely fulfilled, there might be something wrong with those aspirations, because there's always room for improvement. The Hebrew word for this idea is teshuvah. And its challenge for us is to practice a process of self-criticism and self-reflection. To embrace teshuvah is the ultimate goal of our humanity, because the highest level that human beings can achieve is not one of fulfilling all our goals, but rather to constantly maintain a tension in which our goals serve as a foundation to look at the lives we have created and challenge us to move forward and beyond. It's kind of what we say in modern terms, the only person you're really competing with is yourself. Do better than being the person you were yesterday. And we see this notion of teshuvah in all of the Old Testament heroes. All of them are imperfect. We never see a hero who has it all together in the Old Testament. Sometimes it's downright embarrassing. The biblical heroes, if anything, seem too human. They are loaded with imperfections. The point of their stories is that being a hero doesn't mean one has no imperfections. It means that one must do something about those imperfections. No, we can never be perfect, but we should also never be complacent about being imperfect either. Again, there should always be this tension between the imperfect person that I am and the perfect person that I can never truly be. I may never reach that destination, but that shouldn't stop me from heading in that direction. You know that old saying about how life is a journey and not a destination? Well, that's what I'm talking about. By reading the stories of the Old Testament heroes, we are challenged to emulate them. They too were imperfect, and because of that, they were human, and we can identify with them. You know, the times change, the technology changes, but human beings, the more I study history, the more I realize that human beings are very similar to the human beings of 100 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. We are going to fail like Moses or Abraham. We're going to screw up like King David. There are going to be many aspects of our lives, whether it's in our relationships with our partners, with our children, with our friends, co-workers, acquaintances, people in society in general, where we're not going to be who we ought to be, or who we'd like to be, or who we could be. That is part and parcel of the human condition. The idea, the beautiful idea, behind Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is the understanding that to be fully human is not to passively accept our failings. Rather, it is to be fully human and aspire to overcome them as much as we can. To always be open to self-reflection and to self-improvement. And so I guess the challenge I put before us all today, myself included, is to embrace our imperfections, but to never grow complacent with them. May that be so. Amen. Our closing song is number 287. close our service with the words of Macrina Whittaker. All too often, we bemoan our imperfections rather than embrace them. It's part of the process in which we are brought to God. Cherished emptiness gives God space in which to work. We are pure capacity for God. Let us not then take our littleness lightly. It is a wonderful grace. It is a gift to receive. At the same time, let us not get trapped in the confines of our littleness, but keep pushing on to claim our greatness. Remind yourself often, I am pure capacity for God. I can be more. Please join me in the words as I extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this chalice flame, daring to carry forward the vision of this free faith, that freedom, reason, and justice will one day prevail in this nation and across the earth.